Sorry, with some minor technical difficulties there. Hello everybody, I'd like to welcome you all to Dundalk Institute of Technology today as part of All Aboard Digital Skills Week. And today we're going to present a short lecture called You Are What You Post, looking at protecting your reputation and your privacy online. My name is Caroline O'Sullivan, I'm the Senior Lecturer here in Creative Media in Dundalk Institute of Technology, and I lecture on the Communications and Creative Media degree. So really you're here today to start to consider all of the issues around protecting your reputation and privacy online. Some people maybe haven't considered why they need to do that yet, particularly if you're not in a position where you're out in the workplace or you're really thinking about those things. But I'm here to tell you that it is really important. So first of all, I want to say this lecture is not anti the internet. It's not anti-social media. It's not anti-selfie. It's not anti-pornography. And it's not anti-sexting. But I do want to put some of the things that you may be doing online into context. So first of all, we need to consider, what do young people do when they're online? Well, as everybody knows, first things first, social media. It's the majority of young people, when they're spending time online, they're spending time in one of the social media apps. Why are they doing it? Doing it to hang out with friends. They're also looking at entertainment content such as films, TV, and yes, pornography, and also they're playing games. So really, when you're thinking about all of the things that you do online, I want you to keep that in mind when you're thinking about your online reputation and what might that mean for you. So again, we need to think about, why do we share content online? Research shows that really there's a few things that people do to share content online. First thing, they share details about their daily life. Try to fill up spare time. Who hasn't been on Facebook for a couple of hours just to pass away the time? Because their friends are doing it is also very important. They want to meet new people, and they also want to access content. So again, to do with the time that you're killing time, or just to be entertained. Really what we find is when we're sharing this content, we're either looking for one of three things: validation, for judgment, or for acceptance. We're looking to be validated mainly by our peer group. We're looking to be considered and sometimes judged, but very often we're looking at content, and let's be truthful, we're judging other people. And also we're at times looking for acceptance. So we need to consider these things, and I do want you to keep these things in mind when you're thinking about the concept of your online reputation and how important that is. How do I know what way to act online? How do we know how to behave? Just like any other behaviour that we engage in, we're socialised. We learn from our peers, our friends. We sometimes learn from adults. We maybe don't pay all that much attention to what older adults are doing online, but sometimes we are influenced by it. But the main ways in which we are told to act and how we should behave online and offline increasingly is through popular culture. And I just want to talk to you about that for a moment. So, popular culture tells us many things, and when I'm talking about popular culture here, I'm talking about TV, film, advertisements, social media, and celebrities that we see in newspapers, on our favourite sports stars, all of those things. And increasingly in popular culture, we see the concepts being presented to us that we really should be sharing our lives. Every single thing that we do, our life is there to be shared. We only get one opportunity at this to engage, and let's keep all our memories together in one place on social media. That's fine as somebody who's doing the Leaving Cert or somebody who is in first year in college. But what you find is, as you go on and move your way through life, actually, unless you're going to be a reality TV star, or unless you're going to be a digital influencer, really that engagement with the type of content that popular culture tells us to do online could be problematic for you in your future. So I think we really have to stop and consider the messages that popular culture are sending to us and how they impact how we behave online, and actually be a bit realistic about the reality that we present and the way in which we present ourselves, and not be as influenced by popular culture as we may be. So the first thing I want to talk to you about around the elements of popular culture is the concept of reality. So I'm sure you've all spent time on social media sites and engaging and seeing people like Kim Kardashian, Charlotte Crosby, Gary Beadle from Geordie Shore, and the whole concept of YouTube and YouTubers, which is about broadcast yourself. That, in theory, broadcasting yourself online, sharing what you're doing and what you're getting up to in your everyday life is fine. There's actually research has shown there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, and particularly for teenagers, that can be quite at times a very healthy thing to do and as a way to engage with your friend group. However, if we look at the messages and the way in which these reality TV stars present themselves, we find it slightly different, and the reality that they present isn't actually reality at all. I think it's important to note at this point that Reach Out, which are a teen mental health organisation, they published a survey last week which said of 2,500 teens, and they found that 72% of girls and 69% of boys were stressed out about their body image. So that shows that looking at these types of imagery all the time can have an impact on how we think about ourselves and how we feel about ourselves. Also, these type of presentations within popular culture, what it does, it promotes the embodiment of the media's version of what is attractive, which is tall, thin and beautiful. As we all know, when we can look around the room, we don't all look like that in a bikini, but when we're constantly bombarded with these types of images, even if we're conscious of them ourselves, that they're not really real, that they're airbrushed, that there's makeup artists and all the rest, our own perception of ourselves can be affected. But what that also does is that it normalizes engaging in this type of sharing imagery that we see these popular stars doing. As if this is the normal type of behaviour to do. And that actually, again, can have a huge impact on your life going forward if you think about your online reputation. The other thing it does, it displays a cultural message that it's appropriate to over-sexualise your lifestyle, as well as revolving the majority of your life around dating and intimacy. So again, that if you're nobody unless you're going out with somebody, it is about who you are. It is about who you are is wrapped up in that sense of being part of a couple, presenting yourself, presenting your sex life, which again, it really is problematic when you think about as a teenager all of the other things that you have going on in your life. Your study, which is obviously a priority. Your friendships, your real friendships, not your friendships, and also, your part-time job, all of the things that normal 16 to 24-year-olds have to engage with every day. If we think that this is all that's important, that can be a huge stressor as well. It's really important to note as well that this type of popular culture is fraught with stereotypes. We see it all the time, it being presented that girl fights are normal, that two girls can't really be friends with one another unless they're fighting, and that actually they're secretly, we've heard the term frenemies before, which is about, they're friends but they're also enemies. We hear all the time that, that we should be hypersexual, that sex is all important. We get the message that girls are over-emotional and that they're clingy. We also get the message that sex in public is acceptable. And we also get this notion that banter is king. Everything is fine once it's banter. Again, you might think, how does that impact on me and my social media? But what a lot of the research has shown, when we see this sort of normalised behaviour all of the time, every time we go online, our ability to say no if we're being pressurised into engage in a certain type of behaviour becomes much more difficult. We start to have more sexist beliefs around that girls can't be trusted. We start to believe that men are hypersexual because these are the types of images that we're being bombarded with over and over again. I want to move on now I just kind of wanted to tell you about that stuff just to set a bit of context. I want to go on now to talk about some of the issues around online reputation and privacy. And I just, again, want to draw your attention to a couple of facts. It is important to remember that everything on the internet is searchable, is forever, is copyable, and has a very, very large audience. So as much as you think that you are sharing content with your friends, it is really important to remember that it is absolutely, once you've released something into the internet, and be that a tweet, a photograph, a piece of art, whatever it might be, although you might be only sending it to one person, you have no control over it once it's sent. And it's really important to remember those things. So the first thing you need to do when you're considering these issues is to consider, what is your digital footprint? What does the internet say about you? Google yourself. When you Google yourself, what comes up? What is the information that the internet has told you? And has anyone done that recently? It actually sounds a little bit bizarre. You're saying, well, what would the internet possibly have about me? But actually, if you will find, and depending on your privacy settings, you will find that very often it can tell a lot. So you need to consider what your digital footprint is, and then you need to check and update your social media settings. It's particularly important to check your Facebook privacy settings, because they do change. But it is important, once you check your Facebook privacy settings, which of my photographs can be shared with people who are not my friends? What are my photographs that are coming up in search engines through Facebook? Can anybody send me a friend request? Can anybody, by just putting my name into Google, see my Facebook profile? It's also really important to delete or make private old social media sites. We use the site for a while, we're 15, we're irresponsible, we're having the banter with the lads, we're saying lots of things, and then we don't log in there anymore. All of that information is still there. Are you using the same email for your Facebook account as you use for your Tumblr account or your Twitter account, which you got banned from for trolling? You know, where is this information being aggregated on me? So go and search and go and look and make private any of that information. And most importantly, you can do this. Prevent search engines indexing your Facebook. You can go into your settings and you can tell Facebook that it's not allowed to be indexed by search engines. Now, if up until now that has the case, it will take a while for it to stop coming up, but it will stop coming up. Your Facebook should be a place that's private. If it is for you to communicate with your friends, then keep it as such. Don't allow it that anybody can just type your name into the internet and up straight away the first thing that comes up is your Facebook account. You really need to think about, who do I want to be online? And think about, who is my audience? And that includes things like your usernames, your email addresses, and your social media accounts. So it might be funny to have a username that is a nickname that all your mates called you when you were 15, and you're still using that same Gmail account. But think about, is that appropriate to use to set up your LinkedIn account? Is it appropriate to email to an employer with a CV? Are you using bad language, or is it just incomprehensible as an in-joke? So you really need to look at those things and consider them. So your usernames, your email addresses. Again, thinking about your usernames, is there content online that's very private that you're using that username? Don't use your same username across multiple platforms if there are things that you want to keep separate from your professional life and your private life. And as I said, although you mightn't yet be thinking about your professional life, you do need to think about those things going forward really quite quickly. And nobody will give you even a part-time job these days without checking what your digital footprint is. So they will be looking, they will do that very simple thing where they will type your name into Google. So do consider those things. Think about who can access your online content. Can people access your online content that it's none of their business? Really check your settings and your privacy and consider, what is it that I want people to see and who do I want to be online? As I said, this isn't about being anti having the crack with friends online, engaging, hanging out with friends, but it is thinking about your audiences and recognising that you've got multiple audiences online, and as such, you need to curate the image that you have of yourself around that. So when your name goes into Google, if every single image of yourself is either you falling out of a pub drunk or is of a half-naked selfie, how is that going to impact on when you're going for a job or when you're going for an interview? As I said, there's no judgment here as to whether or not you should be taking that content or whether friends should be taking photographs of you in that regard. But you do need to think about who you want to be online and how you want people to see you and who can access my online content. So how do you make sure you're secure? Your passwords, again, this might seem simple, but it is amazing when research is done how much information and how easily hackable people's passwords are, because the amount of people that use their name, 123, or a variation as such. Make sure, look, we all like to look at online content, again, that maybe is, that's not so legal. If you're talking about, BitTorrent sites or lots of content on the web, make sure you are not logged into your social media accounts while you are looking at that content. They can phish, they can get access to your material. And do try to avoid shared or public computers. So don't go over to the library and leave your Facebook logged in, and that might seem like an easy thing to remember. But just, think about that. Think about who's sharing your machine, who has access to your content, and how might you be making your content at risk of being accessible to anybody else. And I'm sure people have maybe had experiences where somebody has left themselves logged into a laptop and somebody can't resist kind of posting a funny status update. But things could be a lot more serious than that, depending on what the kind of content that you have online. And again, back to our idea of how important the fact, that once this information gets out there, it's very hard to get it down again. It's very hard to delete. It's very hard to prevent that from being searched. So it's really important to keep that in mind. Okay, so let's talk about sexting. It is important to note 8 out of 10 adults have engaged in sexting, and 1 in 3 of those aged 14 to 24. It is in the Oxford English Dictionary, and it is defined as a noun, digital technology, the sending of sexually explicit digital images, videos, text messages or emails, usually by mobile phone. There's no point in denying that people do it and people engage with it, but let's really think what that could mean if you do choose to engage with it. It's really important to consider that while equal numbers of young men and women may sex voluntarily, young women are twice as likely to be coerced, blackmailed or threatened into sending pictures. The pressure, and that's why I talk to you about the messages that we get sent in popular culture so much, because we see all of the time, every celebrity that we see is either in her underwear or naked and on her Instagram account, sharing this imagery into the public domain as if, and again, we see this as normalized behavior. It's really important to note, both for male and females, you don't have to do it if you don't want to. Don't feel pressurized into sending something you're not comfortable with. That's the #1 rule. And not everybody is doing it. And no, you are not weird or frigid if you don't want to. It's really important to keep that in mind and to have confidence and agency around that. And I would say, don't ever pressure anybody else into sending an image of themselves to you. If 2 people consensually agree to do that, well, that's fine. I'll talk about that in a minute. But it is the notion of consent is really, really important. It's really important to think about that you don't have control over what happens after you press send. So although Snapchat might seem like a way to sext with limited risk, it's far from totally secure. I'm sure you're aware, there are many free to download apps which allow you to screenshot from Snapchat, which allow you to save images. And that in itself can mean that there's a huge impact on the potential for that image to be shared with other people. You really need to stop and consider what will happen to the photo if you break up with the person or the friend you're sending it to. What happens then? How would your family, friends, employer, future employer would view the situation if it were to become public? And there's been many, many instances of people finding themselves, sacked or their job terminated for images that have emerged that have nothing got to do with the time or the period of time that they were employed in the job. So there are many instances of someone shares a private image with a partner 5 or 6 years ago, and now we're entering the workplace, it becomes public and they lose that job. Particularly thinking about if you have a job that maybe you're going to work with children, maybe you're going to want to find yourself in a particular type of company, if you want to work in a particular country, all of these could be issues. There have been cases where naked photos have been used to blackmail people. And It doesn't necessarily have to get posted to social media. It could be posted to an amateur porn site. This is what a lot of you have maybe heard of before as revenge porn, where somebody breaks up and they decide to share that message material to a site or to social media. It's really important to note this isn't yet illegal in this country. So while Facebook have brought out guidelines and have said that they will, if somebody finds themselves in that situation where somebody is sharing images online of them, they found that images of them have been shared online, Facebook said they will do everything they can to take it down. If it's shared to an amateur porn site, there's no way of getting that material down. It's not illegal. So while there is hope that within the next year or so we might see legislation enacted around this, it's really, really important to consider that fact. And particularly for any of you that may be considering engaging in such an act, you know, if you do so, I suppose I've just told you that you won't get, nothing will happen. But it is, you know, again, it really should make you stop and consider about the engagement and sharing of these types of photographs. If you're on a webcam, you could be recorded without your knowledge. There's no way of you knowing if you're engaging in sexting through a webcam. And again, as I said, and I think it's really important to note, even though some apps delete your message, an image can still be saved by taking a screenshot. If the bottom line is this: if you don't trust the recipient not to share the image, don't send it. Now, I know that's where it gets complicated. You trust the person at the time, and then you can't imagine that anything will ever happen, that they're not in a situation that you won't trust them. But, you know, do really consider those things. And don't be afraid to say no if you don't feel comfortable in sharing those images. If you really, really want to send the image, again, only share it with people that you totally trust. But do keep in mind that, as I said, that this can change. It can mean that, you know, a fight can happen or something bad can happen, a relationship can become broken down, and very quickly your relationship will change. If you're making the image just to look at together, insist that it's made and kept on your own phone or device. If somebody's saying they just want an image, they just want to, like, there's no reason why it can't be on your phone, that you keep it. It's really important, if you do decide to take these images, that you avoid showing your face in any pictures or video. At least that means in the worst case scenario, and there is imagery leaked of you online, you're not showing your face. It offers you some type of protection. It's important to use a secure encrypted messaging app. So there are a number of them. Things like iMessage and WhatsApp are also secure and encrypted, but you do have to remember that people will have access and be able to save them to their phone. What's really important is when you break up with a partner, you arrange a time to meet up and delete any such photos or videos from each other's devices. It's, you know, think about those things. And again, it's hard to believe that you might have to consider those issues around trust. But if you have made a decision to share sexual imagery of yourself, then it is important that that is your imagery and you delete it and take it back. An important note to remember: if you're under 18, or if the person you've taken the imagery of is under 18, and that includes if they're over the age of consent, any imagery of them is considered a child exploitation material. Possessing or distributing explicit images of a young person under 18 is illegal and can lead to criminal prosecution. And penalties can include jail and a fine, but offenders are automatically added to the sex offenders register for at least 2.5 years, and there are no exceptions. So it doesn't matter if you're both 17. If you are sharing sexually explicit imagery of each other at that age, you are breaking the law, and that is highly problematic. So again, that's just something that's really important for you to consider. I think, again, when we think about that, the amount, you know, the age that a lot of the research has shown that 1 in 3 between the age of 14 and 24 have shared or have sexted or shared sexually explicit material. So it is important to keep that in mind. And again, you know, just let that be another reason that if you are finding a way or finding it difficult as a way to say no, it is, you know, if you're under the age of 18, it is illegal. So, to sum up then, how can I protect my reputation online? How do I protect my privacy? you need to think before you post. It's not just about the images of yourself, but it's also the actions and the things that you do. Trolling, bullying, racism, sexism, all of those things that people engage in the cause of banter. All of that activity that people kind of share amongst themselves as a joke and do when they're talking to friends. Remember, when you're online, it's part of a digital public, and it's really important that information and that all of those posts will stay there. So it's not a good look. It's not a way to impress future employers. It's not a way to impress future partners. It's not a way to impress your family or your friends. And so if you keep an eye on your privacy settings, if you keep the things that you post, but generally use the age-old rule, Wheaton's law of the internet. Don't be a dick and be nice to people. If you can do that, you will find that you're much less likely to engage in activity that has a risk of your own reputation. So finally, I just want to remind you of our All Aboard poster competition, which we're running as part of All Aboard. There is a chance to win an iPhone SE, 32GB, and our 19th of April is our closing date. We will accept entries to dktallaboard@gmail.com, and all you have to do is send us a .gif or a .pdf of a poster based on some of the content and some of the things I talked about in today's lecture, really about the theme you are, what you post, protecting your reputation and your privacy online. I'd also like to remind you that there's a workshop for those who want to deal with some of these issues in a bit more depth and consider particularly some of the privacy issues around the likes of Snapchat, Instagram, Facebook. We're having a workshop, a hands-on workshop, which will last about an hour just in the corridor down the road, which is starting at 3 o'clock. So I want to thank you all very much for coming here today, and I'm happy to answer any questions. Any questions?
It was fantastic.
No questions? No? Okay. We'll leave it there, so thank you. Turn this one.